Hello there. What's going on, everyone? Today I'm bringing to you my top 3 Imperials to face off against a Super Star Destroyer. That's right, what if the Empire had to face another Imperial fleet with a Super Star Destroyer, and what Imperials would do best against them? So I'm going to be talking about the Commanders. I've already done a Rebel list, which is a little bit more obvious. You figure Rebels versus Empire. A lot of games tend to be played that way, but of course you're not always going to play Rebels versus Empire. A lot of times you'll play Empire versus Empire. I think that's going to be very, very common once the Super Star Destroyer comes out. Since the Empire is getting the only new ship this year, we'll see a lot more people bringing the Empire to the table. But however, not all Imperial fleets are going to have a Super Star Destroyer in them, and there are some new commanders coming out that can do new things for non-Super Star Destroyer fleets. So that's one of the things that's going to influence some of my decisions as well. Also, I do want to remind you guys there is still time to enter the next giveaway for a $25 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment. It's as simple as that. The winner of that should be announced early this next week, so definitely stay tuned. All right, so without being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into this list and bring you number 3. So number 3 is a new one. That's going to be Emperor Palpatine himself. He's coming in at 35 points, and he kind of acts as intel officer for your entire fleet. I think Palpatine is going to be great across the board. His biggest drawback is the fact that he is just simply crazy expensive. I think he actually works as a pretty good counter to the Super Star Destroyer because it's got 2 braces, 2 redirects, and 2 contains. And so you can really double up the effectiveness when you're shooting at a Super Star Destroyer. Now, I think Palpatine works best on a fleet that has a lot of ships that can shoot. So, basically you're going to have more opportunities to deny them defense tokens and more temptations to tempt them into spending their defense tokens. Again, you're going to put one of each defense token on Emperor Palpatine's card. So you're going to have a brace, a contain, a redirect, and also a scatter. You're going to have those on and an evade. So you're going to have all of those on Palpatine's card. And whenever you at the beginning of a turn, you can say like, all right, this turn, any of you guys who spend a brace, it's gone. And that, you're going to basically be opening lots of fire. Personally, I'm looking forward to flying a whole lot of Architons, maybe with turbo laser reroute circuits, maybe without. It depends. There's a couple of different ways that I kind of want to run those. But one of the ways I used to run Architons is with Intel Officer on many or maybe even all of them. And now I don't have to do that anymore. Although, granted, you probably still could, but I don't have to. And that's a really important thing. So that kind of helps mitigate the cost because Palpatine's very expensive. And that's really the only downfall I can think. But one of the things I want to do here is just kind of talk about how I would use him, because I think one of the first things you need to do early, when you first start shooting, I think you want to stop the redirect. Because at least you want to deny use of the redirect before you deny use of the brace. Largely because after a certain point, redirect becomes useless anyway. If you're continually hammering away on a Super Star Destroyer, you're probably not going to have all your ships shooting at the exact same spot, but also at a certain point, redirect's going to become useless. Once you wear down all those front shields, it doesn't matter how many shields they have on the back. They're not going to be able to redirect to them anyway. Or if you are able to get around them and you're attacking on the rear, once you get the auxiliary and the rear shields down, it doesn't matter what they have on the left, right, or the front. Because you're going to keep hammering away on the sections that have no more shields left to redirect to in the first place. So you really don't care if they have redirects later on. So you definitely want to force the redirects, early. And then after that, once you're comfortable with that the shields are down and you're going to get a lot of attacks in, that's when you want to go for the brace. And especially because you only have to really get a Super Star Destroyer down halfway. So, we're learning more and more. And I think, a key turn where you effectively deny them the use of their brace is really, really going to be very helpful. And so I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve that goes into Palpatine and when best to activate him, because timing is everything in this game, and this is no exception to that. So I think he's got a little bit of a medium learning curve on how to best use him, but a very high payoff if you're able to do it. The only problem besides the cost, I suppose, is that you are giving your opponent a choice, because they can still, you're not denying them total use of it, because they can still spend the brace. I mean, especially if it's going to be a big, well, it's a 13 damage you rolled. Well, you know what? I will spend the brace this turn. And this could even see the rise of Imperial players running tag again on their Super Star Destroyers because, you have a lot of tokens and you're definitely going to survive long enough to get those tokens back. So that could be a potential counter to Palpatine. Something to think about. All right, number 2. Darth Vader himself. So we're talking about offense, right? We definitely want offensive commanders to help bring down a Superstar Destroyer, or at least get it below half. Maybe even kill it. It'll be really fun to see if you can kill him, because the way it's worded, you don't really have to, the way the rules are working, you don't really even have to kill him. You just have to get him low. And that's one of the things Darth Vader can definitely help you do. Again, it's going to work pretty well with ships that are rolling, fleets that have a lot of ships. One of my examples is Architans. If you're running, black dice ships, then maybe not as much for Darth Vader, but Darth Vader is going to work so well on ISD fleets, Architans fleets, anybody who's rolling a lot of red dice, and I think that's a good place to be. If you're red dice, if you're going after a Superstar Destroyer, I think you're going to want to kind of stay at that longer range and try to be swooping around it and trying to outmaneuver it, get to out of the front arc, and stay at long range. Because if you do get shot by a Superstar Destroyer, you definitely don't want it to have all of its blue and black dice also. And so in that case, I think rolling red dice is definitely one of the best things you can do with Vader. And having Vader in your fleet, while he's also very, very expensive, he means that you don't have to take other reroll options. You even can consider using him with black dice heavy ships as well, freeing up your weapons team slot for either just to save points or for something else. But Vader's just so reliable. Especially if you've got like 5 ships or more, he's really going to help out a lot, giving everybody that ability to reroll. And they can do it on both of their attacks as well. And you are going to see, now that does cause you to have to spend defense tokens. So you'll have to be judicious about which ones you choose to spend. And again, if you're getting close, you spend your evades, no problem. If you're far away, maybe you save the evade. There's a lot of choices to be made here, but Vader's just so good for the offense, especially when you just have to get a Superstar Destroyer down halfway. It's a great way to go. And number 1, offensive also, is going to be Sloan. Sloan this was a tough choice, but I think Sloan is just going to be incredibly nasty. She's kind of doing like the best of both worlds. She's kind of doing a little bit of what Palpatine was doing and a little bit of what Vader was doing here, in that it's definitely offensive. It's definitely designed to get as much damage as possible done to a Superstar Destroyer, and also designed to mess with those defense tokens, so this way later in the game they've got nothing left. If you're going to bring a lot of shots against that SSD, especially a lot of TIE fighters or something like that, you're going to have a lot of accuracies that do come up. You're going to be spending those defense tokens. You're going to really be denying them use. You're going to be discarding defense tokens probably as early as turn 2, potentially as early as turn 1, depending on how they deploy. So it's very, very nasty. The real issue, though, is that the Superstar Destroyer can wipe out your TIEs pretty quick. So you'll have to be very considerate on how you use them. Like, one way you may want to use them is deploy them in front of the SSD such that it has to move into you. Once it moves into your range, then you activate those TIEs, shoot, and then fly away. So like you may have to play like cat and mouse with it a little bit, but I mean you're gonna have so much denial. And then the rerolls too. The reroll, because she does 2 different things, which is so good. But the rerolls for the crits also is just tremendous. Now that does mean you're probably not going to be bringing too many bombers, but that's fine. You don't really need to. I mean, just the consistency of those TIEs, and you've got 6 tokens on there, so you just keep firing away. One of the problems I've noticed with some Sloan lists is that they start to lose some effectiveness once you keep firing away at a ship, because most of these big ships have 3 or 4 defense tokens, and then you end up getting accuracies later on and have nothing to do with them. But with an SSD, that's not going to be a problem nearly as quick. So it's just going to be really, really, really good work. And then the trade-off is going to be here, like some SSDs will be built with counter and will be designed to repel that heavy squadron onslaught, but I think even so, if you're just throwing as many TIEs as you can, that's going to be something. That's really going to be something amazing. So it'll be interesting to see how the meta takes shape once the SSDs are out there, and what becomes like all of our predictions. People like me are out there making a lot of predictions on what we think people are going to be building their SSDs. A lot of people initially thought it's going to be like, oh, you know what, we're going to do with a squadron reroll title. We're going to put Callus on there. We're going to give it counter 1. We're just going to completely wreck all this stuff. Well, you may find that nobody ends up running squadrons after SSDs, and then that might go away. And then all of a sudden Sloan comes in and just, wins the worlds against a heavily dominated SSD meta. We don't know what's going to happen until everybody starts doing it, and that's what's going to really make it take shape. But I think Sloan is going to be strong in either category, because even if you are designed to stop squadrons, I just don't have to push all of my squadrons in on the same turn. I send maybe 3 at a time, and we get rid of one defense token each turn. It's still going to be very, very effective against a ship that I only have to get down to half hull. So that's my number 1. I'm going to talk about all of the commanders though, because why not? And, I'll just go over some of the other ones. We'll start in the top row. I'll start with Constantine. Constantine's not good, and I don't really see him being very helpful against an SSD either. Yeah, you could slow the SSD down from speed 2 to speed 1, but it's already. It just doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It's already a slow ship. It's not gonna. Maybe you speed it up a little bit. He could potentially be a little bit helpful, but then again, I just don't see that really making a whole lot of difference. I just don't, especially since I think an SSD is going to want to probably nav a decent amount. If they're not using Jerjerrod, they're going to probably be doing nav several turns to, just for the yaw. So of course then they can just adjust the speed to whatever they want. So I just don't see Constantine as mattering very much. Mahdi will be good against an SSD, because unless of course you're bringing your own SSD. Now he doesn't do anything for the SSD, but if you do get ships caught up in that front arc, you're going to definitely need the extra hull, because it has the potential to throw so much damage, it's ridiculous. So Mahdi, absolutely going to be good, but he's that all the time good commander. Well, he used to be. I guess now he's almost all of the time, since he doesn't do anything for the SSD. Ozzel could be helpful. Ozzel could actually be pretty decent against an SSD. I always will hate Ozzel. I think he's trash, personally, for me, for my playstyle. But for a lot of people, there's a lot of sense in using him in this way, in that you do the slow approach, stay out of range 3, the SSD moves in, and then you jump past and you increase, and have the nav token, have an Ozzel. You can basically go from 0, I think you can go from 0 to 4 with the right combination of setup. So, if you want to really jump past that arc with maybe Raiders or Gladiator or something like that, jump past its front arc into the relatively safer zones of the auxiliary and rear arcs, you could probably manage that with Ozzel. However, I just think that there's so many other things that can do that, like entrapment formation and a nav token could do virtually the same thing, and an engine text, so you can kind of already do that without Ozzel. So I'd just rather use a different commander personally. But Ozzel could help you out with that. So he's not useless at all. And in a ship that the name of the game is outmaneuvering it, Ozzel can help with that. Screed is always, going to be useful against certain things, but, to get that guaranteed crit. However, because of the fact that almost every SSD, that's taken seriously, is probably going to have damage control officer, at least at first. Screed may not be very helpful. Of course, unless you have a whole lot of ships. But again, a lot of those ships, I think the way to use Screed here would be to maybe be running a lot of Raider 2s with disposable capacitors and heavy ion emplacements. And you just force them to contain, and you're just draining shields, as a way to really force them to have to spend those contains, and then eventually drain those contains. I could see that being a potential option for Screed. But at the same time, after those shields are down, you got ships that are going to pop really, really quick. So I'm not sure how viable that is. So Screed ranks kind of low for me. Already talked about Sloan, Vader, and Palp. Tag, I mentioned a little bit. I think Tag is one of those commanders that a lot of people don't like, that I happen to like. And I think he will see some new life on the SSD. I think because of because of his tag has awkward timing for when he triggers, and that's one of the big problems. But the SSD is almost guaranteed to survive long enough for both of tag's triggers to come into play. And he might actually be really, really good on the SSD, because I predict a lot of SSD games will go where the SSD is going to be wanting to engineer late in the game. But as far as tag against an SSD, I think maybe only if you are bringing your own SSD. I don't see him offering any particular insight when you're going against an SSD. The only exception is maybe if you are trying to block the SSD's movement and you're running a Gozanti with Minister Tua and electronic or ECMs. And basically what that is, since I don't have a picture of it up right now, Mr. Tua gives it the defensive retrofit, and ECM guarantees you the use of a defensive token, even if they accuracy it. So this way, basically, you can guarantee that you can scatter. The problem is, if you want to like park a Gozanti in front of the SSD, it shoots you, you guarantee that you scatter, and then it bumps you, and then maybe like something else shoots you, and you have to spend your evade. And then all of a sudden your scatter's gone. Tag brings the scatter back, and you basically can kind of traffic jam the SSD and just keep it in one spot. I could see that being a use for tag. I've done that with tag before. I call it the jerk Gozanti, and it's very effective at that. It could also be effective with Architons or using Turbo Laser Reroute Circuit. Tag, that would be a pretty good thing to use against an SSD. Because if you do get shot, you're like, oh, I can't spend my evade now because I need it for offense. Well, this way tag brings it back for you, so you get some extra uses of the TRC while also being able to evade. So that's helpful. Thrawn is general purpose, pretty much always good, so I could see him being helpful against an SSD. I personally like him because I like to do concentrate fire commands, because I like to field lots and lots of ships. So concentrate fire command with Thrawn might mean like 6 extra dice for me this turn. So I like that aspect. And again, if you're running a lot of fighters, like I think if you're going to go with bombers instead of TIE fighters, so if you don't want to go with the Sloan route, Thrawn might be a good way to guarantee you get those squadron commands, because SSDs may very well want to go with a Gozanti to accompany them. And so you always run that risk of slicer tools on the Gozanti, and Thrawn can help you protect against that. Tarkin, just not very good. I don't see him being helpful against an SSD. He's grossly overcosted. He should be like 20 points, maybe 24 points, something like that. But Tarkin's... I don't know if Tarkin's ever going to be good. Tokens just aren't as good as I think they thought they were going to be in this game. Jar Jar is one I didn't include that I think can be really good, because we talked about one of the key aspects you need to do against an SSD is to outmaneuver it. And Jar Jar definitely helps you do that. With ships like the Architons that really can benefit from it, that's tremendously huge. Less so with the Victory that also really wants to use Jar Jar. The fact that the Victory is just so slow means even with that enhanced turning, it's not going to be able to outmaneuver the SSD quite so well. So even if it can turn the right way, it's not going to have the speed to get out of that front arc fast enough. So Jar Jar, if you're using... if you are using Architons, maybe if you're using really fast Gladiators and maybe even Raiders, I can see Jar Jar being helpful for. So Jar Jar actually would do fairly well against a Super Star Destroyer. I expect a lot of Imperials will run... He also works well on the Super Star Destroyer, so I think Jar Jar is going to be very, very popular after the SSD release. And Piet against the Super Star Destroyer, not particularly helpful. Piet really is probably only going to see play on the Super Star Destroyer. I don't think we'll see him in fleets. I don't think we'll ever see Piet in play on a fleet that doesn't have a Super Star Destroyer. The only exception to that might be if you're doing like a 200-point battle. Then maybe. But Piet doesn't really offer anything particular against another Super Star Destroyer. So that's just a kind of a quick breakdown of what all the Imperial Commanders are going to bring, and yeah, and which ones to use against the Super Star Destroyer. I did the top 3, and then I just kind of talked about them all. And that's about it, guys. Let me know what you think down in the description below if you agree or disagree, or maybe you think my talking points are full of baloney. All right, that's all I've got for you. I will see you guys at Star Wars Celebration next week. So if you are going to be there, come up to the FFG booth, say hi. I've got some lightsaber nunchuck promos. I'll probably have some of those. So, all right, I will see you guys later. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.